So it took me 4 installments to finally land on a name for this book review thing that we're doing. It's going to be called Keith's Corner. I like it. I think it's going to stick. So on this installment of Keith's Corner, what we'll be doing is reviewing chapter 4 of Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Now, if you haven't seen any of my prior videos on Rich Dad Poor Dad chapters 1 through 3, I encourage you to go back, watch those videos, and interact with them. I also encourage you to get Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki for yourself and read it. I found it to be very educational and enlightening. I believe that you too will get value out of it because, again, this is about financial literacy and financial education. A lot of stuff I didn't know coming up, but the information was right there. So, now that I'm coming into this knowledge, I want to share it and talk about different takes and perspectives on the same materials and just see and pick other people's brain because it's all about us getting better. So, without further ado, we're about to jump into chapter 4 of Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. So chapter 4 gets into the history of taxation. The irony of it being tax season around the time I'm recording this video, it's kind of funny to me. But yeah, it gets into the history of taxation. And one of the things I found about the history of taxation is that back in the day, England would do something and then America would follow suit. It just seemed like England was the blueprint for America as far as like how things were done. And you go with history, England, America, 13 colonies, yada yada yada. So this gets into the history of taxation. And initially, both England and America were tax free. There was no state tax, no federal tax, no income tax, no property tax. None of that existed. The only time that taxes would be a thing would be in times of war where the king or the president would put a temporary tax on the people so that they could chip in for the war to help finance it. So it was only a temporary thing and only times of war would that happen. Two instances of where that happened is when England went to war with Napoleon, taxes became a thing. And in America with the Civil War, taxes became a thing. So the system is wartime, taxes. No wartime, no taxes. That was the agreement. In 1816, England's war with Napoleon is over. Taxes in England, over. In 1865, Civil War is over. Taxes on American citizens, over. In 1874, England makes taxes on its citizens a regular thing. In 1913, America follows suit. So you see the pattern here of England doing the thing, America doing the thing. England doing the thing, America doing the thing. They're seeing that it's working, so they following suit. I don't know what they did in England. I don't know how the people in the UK responded to this. But in America, we had two responses to taxation becoming a permanent thing. It was the Revolutionary War and the Boston Tea Party. We wasn't having it. We wasn't having it. It was a full on revolt, rebellion. No way America wasn't going. So it took 50 years for both America and England's citizens to take to the idea of permanent taxation. And the reason why they got it to pass is because at first they proposed it as just to the middle class and the lower class that they would only tax the rich and that the middle class and the lower class would not be taxed. So if you think about it, you hear about people talk about like the top 5% or the top 1%. If democracies run on majority vote, majority rule, the only way you're going to get something to pass is if you have majority people voting on it. So if you come to a majority saying, hey, we're only going to tax the richest among you, so the top 5% or the top 1%, the wealthiest of you are getting taxed. If you all vote for that, then that's how we get this thing to pass. So naturally, the majority, the 95 or 99% is going, yeah, we're gonna vote that into existence because there's no skin off our back, and the richest of us got the money to spend. And you'll hear common themes like if you watch anything political or newsworthy at this point, like it's tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich. These themes have been in play since 1913 or the 1800s, long, long time ago. Like this play has been in motion forever. So to get the law passed, the richest of everybody gets taxed. The upper class gets taxed. Middle class and lower class doesn't get taxed at first. The government starts to see this tax money coming. They're like, it's good. this is a good system, and eventually, now this is already signed, the ink already dry, and what they do is they start making amendments and adjustments and changing the rules. So now the middle class starts getting taxed. The taxation starts trickling down. It's greed. Well, if we get money from the rich, why not get money from the middle class too to add on top of that? And then the lower class and the poorest of them, like we can tax everybody. So they slow walked everybody into taxation by getting a majority of people to vote it into existence, only to break the promise that they would only tax the rich, and them they themselves got hit over the head, and now everybody's getting taxed. It's a trap. So now that everybody's getting taxed, here's where more just fuckery comes in. Loopholes. Now loopholes start coming into play and loopholes are created. The rich had more than just access to money, they had access to education. The rich knew about corporations from the time of sailing ships. Again, back then, Columbus, sailing voyages, all that, what the rich would do is that they would invest in a corporation to finance the voyage, and they would put money into the corporation to finance the voyage, uh, pay for the ship, pay the crew, anything that it took for the voyage to take place, so people could go set sail in search of new land, treasure, what have you. Now, let's say that the ship was damaged or the crew got lost at sea or like people died, right? The damages were only limited to whatever was invested in that corporation. So when you hear the term limited liability corporation or LLC, that's what they're talking about. So that created a separation between the rich or wealthy individual and the business that it was operating out of to protect the actual wealth over here and have the corporation take the hit should anything happen to it. So the tax laws fall on everybody now. Wealthy, middle class, poor, everybody getting taxed. So when the rich went back to the idea of corporations or the structure of corporations, it separated their actual wealth from the company. So their income tax was protected. So when you think about a corporation, you might be thinking brick and mortar buildings, skyscrapers, whatever. So take McDonald's for example. We're gonna use McDonald's, right? So take McDonald's for example. You might think McDonald's or the corporation of McDonald's or the business of McDonald's is all the buildings with the golden arches on them. That's not the case. The McDonald's Corporation, the McDonald's LLC, is rich and powerful as it is only a piece of paper. An LLC is only a piece of paper. A corporation is a piece of paper. It's a legal document that creates a legal body without a soul to separate the individual, whoever the majority owner is of McDonald's or of whatever company, it separates their personal wealth from the wealth of the company. So if I own uh if I own Keith's pens, if I own Keith's pens, I'm Keith. I have this much money back here. I'm the owner of Keith's Pens, right? Keith's Pens is a LLC. It's completely separate from me myself. So let's say somebody somebody poked their eye out with one of Keith's pens from the company Keith's Pens, and you go to sue. That person goes to sue and goes, "Hey, I'm gonna sue you. I'm Keith. You're gonna get sued. Nah, I'm gonna get sued. Nah, I'm not gonna get sued. You're gonna sue Keith's Pens because Keith's Pens and Keith they ain't the same thing. This is my LLC. This is my corporation. That's not me. I'm here. Corporation's here. You're suing them. And let's say you win the case. You're getting money from the corporation because that's the money that I've invested into the corporation. That's that's all the money you're gonna get. So if I'm worth 10 billion and I've invested 5 million in Keith's Pens and you sue Keith's Pens for $500,000, you getting that from Keith Spence. You're not getting it from me because that was just my investment anyway. I still got my money back here, and as long as Keith Spence keeps turning the profit for me, we can have that lawsuit money. But the average person doesn't have an LLC or a corporation to fall back on, so they get taxed off the money that they make. So regular Joe Schmo, you gonna go to work, You can put in your hours, you'll get your paycheck, taxes will be taken out of that. And then when it comes time to file your income taxes, you might get a refund, or if you worked too much or you made too much, you might get taxed off that already. Whereas the person that is in control of the company's going to get taxed. We're going to get into that later, but that's just the visual illustration of how corporations and LLCs work. So that's what the rich went to when taxes got levied on everybody. They created corporations to separate themselves from actual taxation on their personal wealth. What made that popular was that corporations get taxed differently from individuals. So we got tax rates. The corporate tax rate is a flat 21% regardless, where individuals' tax rate can range from 10% to 37%, depending on what tax bracket they're in. Another benefit of that is that corporations pay their taxes with something called pre-tax dollars. And what pre-tax dollars are is the way corporations run is that, so for example, people at work, they get their taxes taken out before they ever see their paycheck. The reason corporations don't do that is because pre-tax dollars. So they get their money, they spend their money on everything that's allocated towards that business, which becomes a tax write-off, and then the corporations are taxed on what's left from that big pot of money after all the expenses, everything was bought and paid for. Whatever's left over, that's what you get taxed for. So that's pre-tax dollars. Everything's already bought and paid for. Things can be written off, and whatever's left is taxed at that flat 21% loophole. Information is power, and education is right at our fingertips. It's our responsibility to go out and get it so that we know how the game is played. Is it fair? No. A lot of this stuff is gate kept, but it's out there. You just got to look hard enough for it. And there's enough detectives out here, like freelance detectives, that can find out anything they really want to find out. This should be like among the things that we figure out. A quote that I liked from the chapter, Robert said that his rich dad said to him. He said, "If you're ignorant, it's easy to be bullied. If you know what you're talking about, you have a fighting chance." Meaning, they can come after your money if you don't know what you're talking about, and if you're just gonna like just give your money away to the government, or you could find a way to start a business, get that business generate some type of revenue, and then be taxed at a different rate. Difficult, but not impossible, because the information again is out there. Another quote that I really like said, "If you work for money, you give the money back to your employer. If money works for you, you keep the power and control it." Basically saying, as long as you work for somebody, you're dependent on that. But if you making money work for you, you're free essentially. Like you're not relying on anybody else, because your employer could fire you at any given time. We always talk about how you could just lose your job due to job cuts, unemployment, just unforeseen things. You could lose your job. If you never put any money to the side for yourself, if you never invest in yourself, if you never open up something, you were constantly in a vulnerable position with something bad to happen to you. The reason why that if you work for money, you give all the power to an employer quote got me is because it made me think about something that's been prevalent in our community. Meaning, there was a, I'll say it, whatever. Odell Beckham Jr. was on the Pivot podcast, and he was saying how you can't be set for life with $100 million. He said it with his chest too. He said it like very confidently, and that couldn't be further from the truth. So here's what I do know. What I do know is that athletes and entertainers, but athletes more specifically, they have either financial advisors or people who seek to help them financially when they get into whatever respected league that they're in. There are people that seek to help them. Whether they take the help or not is completely on them. I did a little digging, I did a little math, and we're gonna break down some numbers. So Odell's first contract with the Giants, I think it's about $10 million. 4 years with a fifth year option. he was talking about lifestyle creep and how, he had to buy this for this person and buy that and finance XYZ. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But instead of, you could have made a couple sacrifices. Just what we talking about right now, we're gonna talk about the first contract. Contract number one. And this is all in relation to this quote. If you work for money, you give the power to your employer. If money works for you, you keep the power and control it. It all ties into this, so hear me out. Had he took $1 million out of that $10 million contract and invested it in S&P 500, by now, by now, 2026, by now that would have been a little over $4 million. That $1 million would have grew to $4 million. He's saying that $100 million isn't enough to be set for life for. Where in 2014, had he invested $1 million in the S&P 500, he would have in 2026 $4 million. That one would have grown to four. If he would have invested 10 million in 2018 when he got the $90 million contract extension, that would have given him a dividend of $320,000 a year to $350,000 a year of passive income today. And what passive income is money that's tax free. You don't get taxed on passive income. So with a free $320,000 to $350,000 tax free every year, you can't figure something out. That's the difference between, just using him as an example, that's the difference between working for money and having money work for you. You made $100 million. You say you can't be set for life. And if you would have taken 10% and just put that in the S&P or whatever company, it could have been Nvidia, it could have been one of his last contracts, I believe it was in Bitcoin. So somebody got through to him eventually and like put him on that path. But for him to say you can't be set for life off $100 million, the only way you can't be set for life off $100 million is if you spend $100 million on liabilities and not assets. If you spend money on assets, those assets generate money for you. And then you don't got to keep working for contracts and looking for contracts and feeling like, oh man, once football is done or whatever career is done, like I can't maintain this lifestyle. There are people who made less in whatever field they was in and have more to show for it because they bought assets and they didn't buy liabilities. So to wrap up the summary, money isn't really power. Information is power. Education is power. If you know what to do with the money, you can make a little into a lot. If you don't know what to do with the money, you can have a lot of money and just burn through it all. You're gonna spend the money anyway. Why not invest in something that's gonna give you a return on it? Create some type of passive income for you to generate something. Create a business so that you yourself aren't taxed at the same rate as an individual without a business. Now, this is not for everybody. Capitalism just don't work like that. There needs to be winners and losers, and I don't like the system. I don't like the game, but that is the game that we're playing until something else comes along to replace it that is a little more equal opportunity. But for those of us that have the ability to take advantage of these things and to go out and grab the knowledge, because a lot of it is just people not just don't go get the knowledge. Like that's the truth. And for those that do, these opportunities could be afforded to us. It's not easy. It's not readily available. But if you search hard enough, you can find it. That is the conclusion of chapter four. Uh, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, The History of Taxation. Have you read chapter four, Rich Dad Poor Dad? If you have, comment below your takes on chapter four, your takes on any material that I talked about today. Comment, contribute, like, subscribe, share, and until next time, people outside get in the bag. Why not us?